Panzer by GMT. This game has just been released, and it has been released at the same time as its two first expansions, which is unusual. Usually games precede their own expansions. Not here, and maybe GMT could do this because they knew that they could count on a good fan base, because the game is a remake of an old and venerable game, Panzer, very well respected among war gamers. Also, the game covers a pretty popular topic, which is tank warfare. Many war gamers are tank buffs. The game is about World War II on a tactical level, all things that many of us like. I'm one of those. I'm one of the people that like all of these things. So, World War II tank warfare on a tactical level. This is a two-player game that also plays very well solitaire, and it is a game that is divided in three different sets of rules. You have the basic rules that will allow you to play a basic game, which is indeed a game proper, not just a tutorial. It is a game that can stand alone. It has its own dignity and identity. Then you have a lengthy set of advanced rules, and on top of that, even a set of optional rules. In any case, so far I only played the basic game, and that is what I'm going to discuss today and what I'm going to review today. Because maybe some of you are thinking whether or not to buy the game just for its basic version. Well, I hope that I can give you some information about that today. In any case, when I will review the advanced rules, it will be good to have something to build upon so that I do not have to start from scratch. I can give you a general sense of the game today, and then we can move from here in my next video about Panzer. In any case, today we talk about Panzer, the basic game. This is the map of the game. It is printed on paper, so I snapped it under a piece of plexiglass. Not a problem at all as I'm playing the game, but now that I'm filming, that produces reflections and other types of strange light events. Anyhow, the map is printed on paper, not a mounted map, and there's only one map. I was a little surprised because there are many tactical games of this type that come with several maps that you often can combine. I'm thinking of Conflict of Heroes here, but in this game you only have one map. I guess you'll need to purchase the expansions to get more terrain. The scenario book comes with two basic scenarios, two scenarios that can be played using only the basic rules. One scenario uses this half of the map here and will represent the fight for control of these two bridges here. The other scenario uses the other half of the map, and here the key element is that village. One side will enter from this edge here, and the other side from the center of the board, and the two sides are trying to take control of that village there. Each turn starts with a spotting phase, during which you determine which units of the opponent you can target. You can target with a fire order. After the spotting phase, you have the command phase, in which players assign commands to each of their units. Each unit will receive a command. There are 4 commands: fire, fire, and then move, move, and overwatch. That means pretty much opportunity fire. These commands are issued face down so that the opponent doesn't know which unit is receiving which orders. And this is great when you're playing face to face, fog of war here. But even if you're playing solitaire, actually, I found that the order system still works well. In that case, of course, you issue your orders face up because there's no reason not to. But even though you have full knowledge of the orders that have been issued, still orders create restrictions, because then once the operations on the board start, you have to stick to the orders that you gave. That forces you to act in ways that maybe you hadn't predicted. That the situation creates unpredictable circumstances, and to me that is always a plus when I'm playing a game solitaire. Anyhow, After the command phase has been resolved, that is, after you place your commands on the board, you roll for initiative. The players roll 2 dice, whoever rolls the highest number goes first. Which is, to me, not an ideal way of resolving this, because it is very random and very important. The first thing after the initiative phase is the combat phase, during which fire and move and 5 orders are resolved. In other words, during which players fire. They resolve their fire orders, they attack the opponent. So you attack before moving, you attack from the position in which you ended movement the previous turn. But if both players issued a lot of fire order, whoever gets initiative will get to deliver a lot of damage on the opponent, or at least it will have, that player will have the opportunity of delivering a lot of damage, of causing a lot of distress. True, this can be mitigated by Overwatch. Overwatch allows you to fire against an opponent that is firing or moving in your line of sight. So basically it allows you to fire during the opponent's combat phase or movement phase. So even if you do not have the initiative, the opponent fires at you, then you fire back with Overwatch, the opponent goes back to resolving his combat phase, maybe you have more Overwatch. Still, going first is powerful. It is a very powerful thing, and it is, again, completely random here. There is no way of manipulating or controlling that initiative roll. Anyhow, as I said, after the initiative phase, you have the combat phase. Units that have a fire order fire without penalty, but also they are not moving, so they represent easier targets for the opponent. Units with the fire and move order fire with a penalty, but also are moving, so they are harder to hit by the opponent. And after you resolve a fire and move order, you turn the command marker so that the move sign now faces the front of the tank, and that reminds you of which units have fired already and need to move in the following phase. After the combat phase, you have the movement phase, during which you resolve the move orders, and units will move up to the full movement allowance if they have a move order, half of their movement allowance rounded down if they have a fire and move order, and you resolve Overwatch whenever a situation triggers on Overwatch. That is, again, an opponent moves or fires in your line of sight. Movement is pretty standard. Tanks move up to the movement allowance, full movement allowance, or halved movement allowance, depending on the order that they received. Tanks always must face a hex side. They can move only into the hex directly in front of them, but they receive a free 60-degree turn per hex. And if you want to turn more than that in a hex, then you have to pay extra cost. Also, you have extra cost for non-clear terrain. And you have 3 movement numbers printed on your counter. Those same numbers you also have on the card for the tank. There's a card for each type of tank. And you have 3 numbers. The first represents cross-country movement. It is also followed by a letter that indicates the type of movement that that vehicle has. In this case, we have tracks, and then you have movement allowance for movement on paths and movement allowance for movement on roads. As you can see, you also have a lot of other stuff here, but you do not use all of these things, all of this information in the basic game. All you need to know for the basic game is this number here. If it is more than 0, then the tank has a 360-degree arc of fire. If it is a 0, well, no, the tank can only fire in a cone of fire in front of the tank. Then you need to look at this line here, which is used for resolving attacks, size of your tank, and armor of your tank, which is represented by 2 numbers. One, the armor value on the front of the tank, and the other one, the armor value for the rear of the tank. So, well, I explained movement first, but remember, in the turn, first you fire. How you resolve combat, you have to go through a couple of tables and stats, but actually it becomes pretty intuitive after not long at all. First, you count the number of axes that separate the firing tank from its target. And then you look at this table here, well, at this line on the table, at the range the range of the weapon that you're using. For example, if this tank is firing at a target that is 4 axes away or less, then the tank is firing at point blank, 5 to 9 axes short range, then you have medium range, long range, and extreme range. And for now, you just need to remember the letter that results from comparing the distance to the table that applies to your tank. Then you look at this other table here, the AP hit modifiers, and you will have to take into account all the modifiers that apply. There may be a target size modifier. If you're firing against this target here, for example, there are no modifiers because the modifier is a 0. Modifiers for the target may be moving, maybe in cover. If you're firing with a short halt order, then you have a pretty steep modifier, a negative one of course, because it's harder to hit when you're moving. If you are firing and your tank is damaged, then you have a penalty, and also there's a penalty if you're firing when in Overwatch, and if you have to adjust your arc of fire when you are in Overwatch. You take into account all of those modifiers, and you look at this at the table here. You start from the 0 line and you go up or down the table depending on the total of the modifiers that you have here. You put together all the positive or negative modifiers. Usually they are negative though. Well, you put together all the modifiers that you have, and you will look at the corresponding line, which then you cross-reference with the range that you're firing at. I'm firing at a short range with a -5 total penalty, then my number to hit is 35. I roll 2 dice. You have to determine in advance which number represents the units and which number represents the tens. You roll the dice, and if you rolled equal to or less than your number to hit, then you hit the opponent. Well, depending on which die I'm using here for the units and which one for the tens, of course I have to decide that in advance, I may have rolled a 90, which is a big miss, or a 09, which is a hit. If you hit the opponent, you compare the penetration number of the weapon you're using, the range that you're firing from, and you will compare that with the armor of the opponent. If it's higher, but not by much, then you simply damage the opponent. If it is higher by at least 4 points, you destroy the opponent. If it is less than the armor of your opponent, you do not do damage. So actually, probably you want to check in advance whether or not you can damage the opponent at all from the position in which you are before you fire, because what's the point otherwise? I don't know, target practice maybe. I have some minor gripes about the production of the game, and I want to share these details without detracting too much from the game, because I have to say, I can preface it here, gameplay is excellent. I loved gameplay. Maybe it is because of this also that some of the minor production things stood out as going against the overall enjoyment, as preventing the game from getting to 11. Only one map, that was a little bit of a surprise to me. I expected more terrain options. I guess that you will get more maps and more terrain from the expansions, but you have to purchase those separately. Only 2 scenarios for the basic game. That to me seems like a missed opportunity. With more scenarios just for the basic game, I think this game could be marketed as an entryway game easily. I would recommend it to non-war gamers. I would recommend it to war gamers that want to introduce their friends to the wonderful world of wargaming, because the basic game is very straightforward, very simple, very intuitive. It has those tables that look a little scary at first, but you can get into the system really in an easy way, and once you start playing the game, everything makes so much sense that, again, it would be a really non-threatening entryway game. However, I don't feel like recommending this just for its basic game or as an entryway game, war game, because of the lack of scenarios. You will need to create your own. You can wait until the community of fans creates more scenarios, but that may not happen very much, because I guess that the fans will easily and fast move on to the advanced game, and then probably will have fan-based scenarios for that. So that's a minor thing there that feels to me like a missed opportunity. Minor things, however, when you compare them with the quality of gameplay. Even just at the basic game, I had a great time playing this game. It had a lot of action that was fast, furious, brutal, intense, that developed very strong narratives that led to very powerful, very strong confrontations that left the battlefield littered with smoking wrecks quite fast in the game, in the first couple of turns, which kind of made sense to me when you have these monsters, these machines of destruction that are unleashed against each other, especially at a short range like you have in battles like those in the basic game that only use parts of the map. So the tanks are pretty close to one another from the beginning. You will have to really take advantage of terrain, but there will be cases in which destruction will just happen on a large scale. You definitely have the sense of the violence, and I would say sometimes really the horror and the drama and the tragedy of the events that the game is portraying, while remaining, of course, absolutely playable and enjoyable. The game actually has, I find, a remarkable balance between playability and detail. Really the way in which the ranges work and the angles and different types of weapons against different types of armors. All of these elements really bring a lot of flavor to the game, but they are ingrained into the game seamlessly. They really feel organic. Everything fits together. Everything in this game makes sense, or it feels like it makes sense, and it creates a very immersive experience, one that I had a great time enjoying and, well, experiencing it. So this is a game that I enjoyed a lot, a game that at its basic level I found extremely promising. I am definitely excited now to learn the advanced game, and so it is a game that I am very fascinated by. I do not know that I would recommend it for its basic game per se, mainly because of the lack of scenarios, but it definitely is a game that I recommend trying if then you're curious about also getting into the advanced game, because from what I've seen here, the advanced game really promises to be something special. I'm going to learn and play the advanced game as soon as I can, and as soon as I'm done with it, I will report in one of my videos.